right. We're going to look at an encounter today in the life of Jesus. So if you've got your Bibles, I want you to turn to or click to John chapter 5. John chapter 5, this is an encounter that I would probably dare to say that probably most of you in here, you know something about this, or at least you'll know something about this, some of the elements of it. But it's in John chapter 5, so I'm going to start reading in verse 1. I'm going to read out of the New International Version. And it says this: sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for the feast of the Jews. Now there was in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by, watch this, 5 covered colonnades. Now that's not a word that we probably used last week or last month. It's not a word we use, and it's sometimes, well, what's a colonnade? Well, there's a colonnade. It's more than a column. Let me give you some other translations to kind of help tell us what a colonnade is. The New Living Translation says 5 covered porches. The English Standard Version says 5 roofed colonnades. The New American Standard says having 5 porticos. Now that makes a little bit more sense to me. I mean, most of you today, when you came in, you walked up under the portico out there. So that's what a colonnade is. It's a covered porch. It's something covered. And Amplified says it's having 5 porches, alcoves, colonnades, doorways. But the reason I'm pointing it out, because I want to come back to it here in just a little bit. Verse 3 goes on to say, and here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. That's a long time, isn't it? 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there, he learned that he had been in this condition for a long time. And he asked him, and notice this question in verse 6. Jesus asked him a very interesting question, a strange question perhaps to ask an invalid. Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? And again, as you'll see in verse 13 later, this man had no idea that this was who Jesus was. As far as he knew that Jesus was maybe a family member of one of the other disabled people, because there was other people there, as we'll see later, that helped them and did do different things. And maybe he was just being a friendly friend of one of his neighbors there, and came up and said, hey, buddy, would you like to get well? How many of you have found that in the Bible, or really not just in the Bible, but any text written, handwritten or typed or text or email, sometimes tone is hard to detect. You know what I'm saying? Paula always tells me she never likes to answer maybe a constructive criticism email or something like that. She'd rather talk face to face because tone is just hard. Sometimes, people write different things. Sometimes in a text message, somebody might use all capital letters. Riley thinks when you write in all capital letters, you're yelling. To her, that's yelling. So if Paula writes her, hey, make sure you make your bed, Riley will say, well, why are you yelling? And she just wanted that to make sure that stands out. Sometimes so that we help people understand what our tone is, we might put an emoji like a smiley face or a heart. In other words, I'm not yelling, I'm not mad, so again, tone is hard, it's hard to detect. And I don't think that Jesus was being rude here at all. I certainly don't think that was intent when he asked this invalid, when he asked him, he says, do you want to get well? But it could have been offensive. And had it been in today's culture, there would be some group somewhere that would be after Jesus' 501c3. They would be trying to get him disbarred, get him out of the ministry, because that's just not politically correct. But I want you to get this. Here's something well worth remembering. In fact, you may want to write this down. Whenever God is speaking to you and he's asking you something that's obvious, there's something not obvious going on. Let me say that again. Whenever God is speaking to you and he asks you something, he makes a statement that seems obvious, probably something not obvious is going on. For example, like when Adam and Eve had sinned in the garden and they hid themselves, and God says, Adam, where are you? You do know that God wasn't looking for Adam. Right? Adam was lost and he was hiding. He was hiding from God. God is omniscient. God is all-knowing. He knew exactly where Adam was. So something obviously that's not obvious is going on. He's more asking Adam, where are you? Where are you in your thinking? Where are you in our relationship? So again, here in verse 6, Jesus walks up to this man and he says, do you want to get well? Now notice what this man says. Verse 7 says this, Sir, The invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. When I'm trying to get in, someone else gets in there ahead of me. Today, I want to call this message, Getting Out of Stuck. Getting out of stuck. Listen, there's something going on. There's something going on in this story here at the Pool of Bethesda that I want us to see. Now, as I said, there's probably most of you are familiar with this story, but just in case there's someone that you're not to shame you but just maybe you don't know what the story is. And I, a lot of times I would say, when I would talk about that, I would say, well, tradition says, but I really feel like would be more appropriate to say legend says. And legend says, because the reason I say that is because I don't find one person in the Bible that I see that got healed at the Pool of Bethesda. Like Bartholomew or Nathaniel or some other biblical name, and the man that got healed at the pool said da-da-da-da. I never see that in the Bible. But it is said, and legend says that an angel would come down and he would stir the waters, and the first one in the pool, when the water stirred, would get healed of whatever ailment that they had. But again, I don't ever see one person. You got to know that there was some rebellious teenager somewhere hiding in the bushes. Every so often they would take a little rock about this size, throw it over in the pool, and watch people dive in the water. And they'd feel around and say, it's another rock. And these teenagers would run and laugh and have a good time. But listen, so again, it was just the belief that this might be true. Hundreds of disabled people would line around this pool, waiting for that water to stir. So Jesus comes to town. He shows up at the pool, and maybe he inquired. Again, this is in Jerusalem. This Pool of Bethesda is in Jerusalem, and so Jesus was always in Jerusalem. I don't know. Maybe had never been by there before, but maybe someone that knew his healing ministry says, Jesus, we have this Pool of Bethesda, and there's so many sick people and such. You have such an amazing healing ministry. Why don't you come? And so maybe Jesus agrees to go, and he goes there, and this is so-and-so. Maybe this is a guy who had a ministry to go and to help take care of and to bring water stuff in. And this is Larry, and this is Betty, and this is so-and-so. And then he says, let's get this guy named Bob. And this is Bob over here. Bob has been here longer than anyone else. Bob has been in this condition for 38 years. Now, we don't know that Bob has been there for 38 years. It just says he's been an invalid for 38 years. Maybe he's been there 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, but he's been there the longest. And just like Jesus, just like his character is, he goes to the worst case scenario. He walks up to Bob and he says, Bob, do you want to get well? And oddly enough, Bob didn't just say yes. He doesn't say yes, because what I want you to see is that Bob is stuck. He's stuck mentally. And not only stuck mentally, he's stuck emotionally. He's stuck physically, of course. And I'll bet you this, that Bob was not the only one in those alcoves and those porticos that was stuck. I'll bet you that. So today I want you to look at this Pool of Bethesda a little differently than you may have in the past, because I see Bethesda is a trap. Bethesda is a trap. It's a people trap. It makes promises, but it fails to deliver. It promises a miracle, but the miracle never comes. So when Jesus asked him, says, do you want to get well? Maybe he's asking this. Maybe he's just probing this guy to see just how much damage has this done to this man? How much damage has this done to this man emotionally, mentally, to do this? And when you think about that question, do you want to get well? We said, it's kind of a strange question. Maybe it's really not that strange. I've been in full-time ministry for almost 35 years. And in that 35 years, I've done a lot of talking to people, not just from the pulpit, but one-on-one in counseling sessions, in marriage counseling, and doing some other types of counseling. And as I got to thinking about this being a strange question, I thought, it's really not, because I remember myself saying something very similar oftentimes when a married couple would come in, and some of the couples, man, it was bad. It was bad. It was way above my level of counseling. I would recommend higher levels of counseling for them. But I would ask them this, after hearing their story, I would kind of find out what their story was. I find myself often asking this question: do you want a better marriage? And it's almost like asking an invalid, do you want to get well? And I remember Kenneth Hagin the founder of Rhema Bible Training, or is it Rhema Bridal College? Training. Rhema Bible Training Center. He founded that school. And he was greatly used in the 1940s and 50s in the Great Healing Revival. Some of you may have studied that. But he told us one story of a lady who had been to several well-known ministers that was in the healing movement. And now here she is in his. And he said this oftentimes. I remember him saying this. He says, if you listen to people talk long enough, you can locate them. And she came down, was talking to him, and he kind of located her. So he said, I tell you, I can help you. He says, but will you do what I ask you to do? And she said this. She said, well, I will if it's easy. And I found that sometimes when you ask a married couple, do you want a better marriage? Well, duh, we're here, aren't we? We're here in counseling. But will you do what I tell you to do? Because it is not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. Will you do what I'm telling you to do? So for us that are here today, and I want you to hear this. Don't miss this. If you're here or maybe you're listening in on our live broadcast, listen to this. Bethesda represents any place in your life where you're stuck. Bethesda represents any place in your life where you're stuck. And there may be a few of you here today, but I think it's more than a few. People that are stuck relationally, stuck in your job, stuck in your vocation. Well, job and vocation, aren't they the same? No. You could love your vocation, but you could just hate your job. You hate the place where you are. You hate the people that you're working around. It's difficult. It's hard. There's no joy there. But I love the vocation of what I'm doing. But so maybe you're stuck in that job, maybe in your health, or maybe you're stuck financially, or maybe you feel stuck in pornography. Maybe you feel stuck in anger, in jealousy, maybe you're stuck in, you can't get past unforgiveness in your life. And listen, there's times in my life that I was stuck. There's times in my life that I've been stuck, and there's times that I didn't know that I was stuck, but I was stuck. And there's times when in this church, I feel like that we've been stuck. I feel like even right now we're coming out of a stuck period. And there's things that we have to do. So what's going on? What's going through this man's mind when Jesus comes up to him and says, do you want to get well? For him to answer Jesus the way that he did, this must have been going through his mind. Clearly you are new around here. Clearly you don't understand how things go, how things work around here. Because there's a system. There's a system. You know, there's always systems how different things work. Little things, there's a system. When I think about the story, I mean, it kind of reminded me of a system that for a few years we went to a place on our vacation called Destin, Florida. Actually, it wasn't Destin, it was Seaside. One of the most beautiful beaches. If you've never been to Seaside, you got to go to Seaside. It is not like Myrtle. I'm sounding like a travel guide here, but it's white sand. It is beautiful. I mean, the water it's called the Emerald Coast. It is emerald green. It is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So we go there. It's an 11-hour drive from here, but we'd go there. And so we kind of had our stuff. We were going to go down the beach in the morning. And so Paul and I, we get up at 7 o'clock to go set our stuff up at the beach. Well, we get up and we have to walk down this boardwalk thing. We have to cross the road, carrying our stuff, pulling it in our wagon, our tent, and everything else that we're going to set up our spot. And then we walk down this. It's about a 200-yard pier that you have to walk through, all these, reeds and stuff like that. And then you come over the hill, and then there's the beach, man. And it is wow. It's just beautiful. But when we got there, we got over the hill, and there's all these chairs, these rental chairs out there, and we're just like, wow. And there's this guy setting them up. So we took our wagon, and we about another 100 yards or 200 yards this way. Wanted to be right there in the front, but we had to go down this way. So the next morning, Paul and I are going to get smart. We ain't sleeping in until 7. We're going to get up. So we got up about 6 o'clock. We got up about 6 o'clock, loaded our stuff up, and we got over the hill, and there's Cabana Boy setting up chairs. But he wasn't gotten as far this time, so we hurried. We didn't have to go 300. We went about 50 yards this way. We thought tomorrow we're going to get up earlier. We're figuring out, what we're doing? We're figuring out the system. So we got up about 6 o'clock. Huh? That was the next morning. We got up at 6 o'clock and realized that Cabana Boy was getting there about 6:15. So the next morning, we got up at 5:30. We came over the hill. It is, baby, set your tent wherever you want it. We own the beach. And man, we're out there, we're setting it up, and here he comes, and he's setting it up. You know, it's because it's a public beach. First come, first serve. He sets up, goes around us, sets up, da-da-da-da-da-da. So man, we're on it now. But about Thursday, you know, I'm thinking, this is just absolutely crazy. We're on vacation, getting up at 5:30. Our kids are in the bed sleeping. And here Paul and I is pulling this wagon. We got where we wanted to, but what we finally get there and set up our set and just sit there and look at the beach. And it was beautiful for about 30 minutes. I mean, the beach was beautiful always, but we sat there for about 30 minutes. Okay, then we went back and did breakfast and all that stuff. And then, you know, came down with everybody, and there's our spot. And so the last morning there, we thought, this is kind of crazy. Let's just sleep in till 7. So we got up at 7. You know, we'll just go down the beach a little bit. So we get up, we come over the hill and get down there. Cabana Boy is there working, and I'll be doggone if he didn't leave a spot 10 foot by 10 foot. He left a spot. And we walked down there, and he said, hey, I saved this spot for you. And I thought, doggone it, if I'd have just known. I'd have made friends with Cabana Boy on Tuesday. I should have tipped him about Tuesday and said every day. It would have been worth it to be able to sleep in. So again, Jesus, something's going through this guy for him to say, you know, let me show you, let me understand, let me educate you on the process here. He says, I don't have anybody to put me in. When the water is stirred, I have no one to help me in. See those guys over there? That's their family. They're alternate. They always have family coming in to help them. And this guy over here, that's his small group at his church, and they just alternate and come in. So whenever the water stirs, they're able to get in ahead of me. I don't have anyone like that. In other words, what this guy's doing, this lame man is doing, he's telling Jesus about his highly organized stuckness. He's telling him all about the system. Let me give you a clue how you know you have organized stuckness in your life. If somebody asks you a question, if somebody asks you a simple question about your situation and you have to give them a complicated answer. Well, son, I just wish it was that simple. Let me tell you how it really is. Listen, don't miss this. The longer that your problem persists in your life, it becomes embedded in your personality. And it becomes a habit in your life. It becomes a system that your life responds to. The thing is, you can't see it because it's a blind spot to you. You know what a blind spot is? A blind spot, here's what a blind spot is. A blind spot is something that others see about you in your life, but you don't see about yourself, because guess what? It's a blind spot to you. And I've got news for you. Every one of us have blind spots. I've got blind spots. You've got blind spots. We all have blind spots. Man, that's why we need godly people in our life to help us kindly and in love point out those blind spots to us. So Jesus asked him again, do you want to get well? Again, it was a simple question that really demanded a simple answer. But this man's system was organized. His stuckness is organized. Not only did he have an organized disability, not only did he have organized stuckness, he's got a cultural support group. He's got a cultural support group. That's all those who are laying around with him in that. Have you ever been around someone that has been in a system or has been in a condition in their life for a long time, and it's almost like their life just revolves around that thing now? I mean, when you hear people come up and talk to them, one of the first questions is, well, how's your back, or how's your knees, or what'd the doctor say at your last appointment? It's all revolves around that. And I think sometimes disabled people and people that have gone through those things, don't talk to me about my doctor. Because everything seems to revolve around that. Again, think about this guy. For 38 years he'd been in this condition, and no telling how long he'd been there. So he's laying at the pool of Bethesda, and he can't get in, but this is his position. And this is how he sees everybody. And maybe he could raise his head up, and maybe he could talk, maybe he could look around. But he couldn't get over there. And he couldn't get to the edge of the pool. He couldn't roll in. And he didn't have anybody to help him in, but this is the sight for all those years. and other people in the same condition. That's all they did when they just laid around in those conditions, year after year after year. Imagine that's being stuck in that, talking that day after day to the people around you. They're talking that all the time. And then you always run across this. You always run across that, I can top your story kind of a thing. Like, how'd you sleep last night? Oh, it was terrible. Oh, I had a bad night. Yeah, I had a bad week. And then some guy down there, a bad week. I had a bad month. You tell somebody, you never hear like this, man, I totaled my car. You never hear somebody go, well, somebody opened the door and dinged my door the other day. No, the story's always got to be one of those toppers. Always got to top your story. So you're around that all the time. So now remember back in verse 2, I talked about those colonnades, those 5 covered porticos. Not only did these people around the pool have an organized system supported by people who were just as sick as they were. Now watch this. They had 5 covered colonnades. They had 5 covered porches. In other words, that offered them shade, which made them comfortable in their waiting. So they didn't get. So now they're being made comfortable. So now we see that he's trapped in a system. He's trapped in a culture. He's trapped in a culture and a structure that's sheltering his disability. You know that governments create systems that people get stuck in. Not just here in the States, but the States is just like it. Governments all over the world do this. Listen, welfare is a system that was not created to live in. Do you hear me? It was created to, when people were going through a difficult time, to help them to get past that, not to live in that system. But people get stuck in that system. And that's all they'll ever experience. And so they learn to work the system and make it work for them. But that's not God's best. Is that right? I want you to understand this. You can have your own Bethesda. You can have your own Bethesda, and you may be stuck, and you may have some well-organized stuckness and have some highly organized problems, but I want you to understand this. Bethesda is rigged for failure. Yeah. It's rigged for failure. I mean, think about this. Even if legend were true, one time a year, one person gets healed. How crummy is that? Yeah. Let me ask you something. Does that sound like God? A healing lottery? Does that sound like God? No. When Jesus asked the man, did he want to get well, the man could almost hear himself saying, I don't even know why I'm here. Do you want to get well? Listen to his answer. I have no one to help me in. I have no one to help me in. I have no chance. Then why are you there? Because that's his system. That's his culture. That's his support group. Here's what I want you to get today. Here's what I want you to get today. Maybe you're in here today, and man, the Holy Spirit's, like, as we said, God, open our eyes, open our ears, and you're saying, you know what? That's exactly what I'm in. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. You got to get you got to get aggressive. You got to say, man, I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to be stuck anymore. I don't want to be stuck in a relationship, in a friendship that's not good, in jobs that aren't any good for me. Whatever it is, when you recognize your source of stuckness, we've got to get fed up with it. You've heard this before. You've got to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. We've got to come to that place. We've got to say that I'm done. Now listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. Don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. But I don't know if the prayer line is your answer. When I'm talking about a prayer line, I'm talking about coming lining up here to be prayed for. I don't know that that's your answer. In fact, you've done that time and time and time and time again, but for some reason you're still stuck. Stuck emotionally, relationally. It's established in you. It's embedded in you. It's almost become what we would call a stronghold in your life. And this man in the pool here in John chapter 5, his miracle wasn't at the pool. His miracle was not at the pool. Just like hundreds of other people that were laying there with him, their miracle was not at the pool. Listen, Jesus told him, get up. Get up, get out of here. Maybe that's why God told Abraham and David and Moses and Jesus, get out of here. Go away. Maybe that's why he had Joseph Go away from your brothers who despise you and see no good in you. Get away from them. Listen, if I saw someone, here it comes. If I saw someone in this mud, if it was quicksand or just mud and they were sinking, they were in this and they couldn't get out, I would holler to them, "Get out! Get out of the mud!" And they may say, I can't. I'm stuck. I'd say, get out of the mud, because the longer you're in it, the harder it's going to be to get out. I can't. I'm stuck. And I would yell, step out of your boots. Yeah, that's system. See, we think that we are the boots. We think that the boots is us, but it's not. See, this is your system. This is your system. This is your culture. That's that support group that just keeps you locked in, and we think that that's us. Sometimes it's a culture of friendships that we don't need. See, and we think that our boots are protecting us, but they're not. See, it's your boots that's keeping you stuck. It's that system that's keeping you stuck. It's that culture of friends that we need to get away from. And then some people say, well, they're awful nice boots. I've got a lot invested in them. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. We got to get away from those things. Listen, there may be some people that need to go home today and delete some of your friends off your social media stuff. Man, I'm sick of the negativity. I'm sick of the gossip. I'm sick of those things. Sometimes it would sound so rude. Just tell people, man, don't call me. Don't come around me until you get some things right in your life, because you're not good for me. You know, and we step out of that stuff. We step away from that stuff. We tell the devil, I'm none stuck. I'm getting out of this. I'm out of this. I'm out of this. He goes, yeah, I've heard you say it before. Right. But he doesn't realize you stepped away from it. You stepped away from the system. Find the strength. Find the strength to say no more. No more. You got to do that. Listen, when God says, hey, do you want to get well? Don't say, yeah, God, but there's a system. There's a system. You know, in the end of this story, in John chapter 5, Jesus comes back and he sees this man in the temple, and he says something interesting to him. This is, to me, more interesting than when he said to the invalid, do you want to get well? He said, I see you're well. Watch this. Stop sinning, or something worse is going to happen to you. Whoa. Well, it wasn't like, remember, he was an invalid. It wasn't like he was a man about the town. Listen, I don't know exactly what Jesus was referring to there, but perhaps this man's sin was surrounding himself and surrounding his life with a system that stole his future, what God had planned for him. Listen, don't surrender. Don't surrender your life. Don't surrender your life to people or to a system or to a culture that's going to rob you of your future. Let's all stand. You know, it's amazing to me that there's a stark difference in the way that Jesus talks about sin and the way that some Christians talks about sin. The way that some Christians talk about sin is this. Well, you know, we'll always, have a little sin and always have sin in our thought life and in our actions till we go to heaven. You know, we'll always, and then what you answer to that is just 1 John 1:9 it. Right? Hey, that's what the grace of God's there for, right? Just 1 John 1:9. He's faithful and just to forgive you if you ask. So if you do it and if you fail. That's a stark difference how Jesus handles sin. What did he tell this man? Stop sinning. What did Jesus tell the woman caught in adultery? Go and sin no more. He didn't say go and sin less. Listen, we're still dealing with this flesh. And not to go back and decide in with Christians that say that, but listen, I'm not perfect yet, and neither are you. We will blow it. But I tell you what, I'm blowing it a whole lot less than I did 5 years ago. I'm blowing it a whole lot less than I did 10 years ago. I'm growing. I'm getting away from those things. And some of you are too. We're working towards, we're becoming holy as He is holy. We're doing what Jesus said, we're stopped sinning, but doggone it, I slipped up again. That's when we go to 1 John 1:9. Listen, find the strength to surround yourself with the right people, the right culture, and the right system. Listen, systems aren't all bad. Culture is not all bad. People aren't all bad. They're good people that will help you and that you can help. We're there for one another. Because remember, we're better together. But we've got to find the right system, the right culture. Amen? Amen.